Hello, my name is Jaru, and I am a Deltarune theory crafter who has made over a dozen major theory videos about this game. However, all of those theories came out before the release of chapters 3 and 4, so today we're going to briefly review these theories in order to figure out if they've been debunked, confirmed, or something in between. To be more precise, we'll be slotting them into one of these 6 tiers on this tier list. All of these tiers are pretty self-explanatory, so without further ado, let's dive in. First up, we have my Is Deltarune an alternate reality or alternate timeline video. Now, this theory is the first theory I ever made on my channel for Deltarune, and I can tell you right out the gate it's going into sound, but the reason for that is that I have since made a sequel theory that basically says I disagree with everything in this video. It could technically still be true, we don't know that it's busted, but I basically argued that I thought Deltarune was an alternate timeline in the same universe as Undertale, whereas now I don't think that's the case. So technically, it's still possibly true, but I don't really believe in it anymore. Then we get Who is Kris? This video goes over basically all the possibilities regarding Kris's identity and whether or not they are a Deltarune version of one of the humans from Undertale. And specifically, if they are one of those humans, which human are they? Are they one of the 6 human souls? Are they Frisk? Are they Kara? Etc. And long story short, I concluded that Kris is likely the Deltarune version of Frisk, which is not necessarily the most popular theory, as most folks think that Kris is the Deltarune version of Kara, given that, they grew up alongside Asriel the same way Kara did in Undertale. So it's certainly not my most well-beloved theory, but I would pretty comfortably put this in still viable. We simply haven't learned enough to hard prove one way or another, or even hint one way or another which character the Kris is. Like, they could still be just a totally original entity, in which case this is busted. However, the bottom line is we know so little about Kara and Frisk that we really can't say for certain who Kris resembles more. Initially, because Kris seems to love chocolate, it made it lean towards more Kara, but then in Chapter 3, it was revealed that Kris's favorite food is actually pie, which leans them more towards Frisk. And there's other small details that you could argue one way or another hint towards which character, but I would say it's all very subtextual at this stage. So I wouldn't say it's gotten stronger, I wouldn't say it's gotten weaker, I'd say it's still viable. Not much else to say on the matter. Then we have Deltarune Magic. This is a video that is enormously complicated and is not really a single theory so much as it is dozens of smaller theories woven together into a larger narrative. In fact, I'm gonna have to double check. I'm gonna actually have to pull up the video in another tab and remind myself exactly all that I argued in this video, because Lord knows it was a lot. Okay, looking at my, from what I can tell, the key conclusions of the video were that I thought that the human-monster war still happened in the Deltarune reality. One monster acquired enough human souls to become a god. That god became known as the Angel. The Angel sealed away all magic and memory of magic in another dimension. The magic dimension became known as the Dark World. The only way to access the Dark World is through using determination to cut the barrier between worlds. Cutting the barrier causes magic to pour into the Light World in the form of dark fountains, and this intense magical power, possibly combined with your determination, is responsible for bringing the Darkners to life. Okay, that's a lot. And quite frankly, there's no hard confirmation one way or the other regarding how this exactly works. We haven't learned any more of the ancient history of this setting. We haven't learned any more about the true identity of the Angel. There's certainly hints to support this potentially. Like the fact that Gerson's, the old man, has so many combat abilities kind of implies that he was a warrior at one point, and there really would only need to be a warrior if there was a war to be fought. So, you know, there's some potential interpretations that could argue it's gotten stronger. But as far as the nature of the Dark Fountains and their magic and how it's tied up with the angel and all that, it's still entirely up in the air. No way to say one way or another. So I'm putting this in the still viable tier. And this, you're going to see this as a running trend. Anything that involves the grander scope, like story of Deltarune, like involving Kris or Gaster or the Angel, any of that stuff is going to probably end up in still viable purely because we are still only halfway through the game, and the game isn't really interested in exploring the deep lore as of yet. Then we get to my boy, the flagship theory of this channel. What is Ralsei? Or as it is better known as, my Asriel's Dust theory. Now, I'm going to have to kind of talk about this very tentatively regarding where I place it, because for those who don't know, I'm currently working on an Asriel's Dust 2.0 theory. Or Asriel's Dust Theory 2.0. I don't know how to phrase it. Basically, an updated version that changes some things and alters it in a few ways in order to incorporate all the new lore and information we've gotten in chapters 3 and 4. It's a pretty big deal theory. I've made a lot of progress. I'd actually hoped to get it out this month, and I probably could if I tried really hard, but it would end up being like in the last day of the month, and I wanted to get out a couple videos before the end of November, so that way I'm not completely broke during Christmas. So, here we are. Anyway, point is, I don't really talk too much about where I view this theory, because I don't want to spoil the contents of my sequel to this. But to clarify, this isn't just the Asriel is dead. That's not the whole theory. The theory is Asriel died, his dust became Ralsei, his soul was absorbed by Kris, and Kris is possessed now by Asriel, and in turn, the player is actually only controlling Asriel, which is why we only control Kris part of the time, because Asriel only controls Kris part of the time. And there's some other smaller details sprinkled in, but that's the gist of it. And I will say that I think parts of that theory have gotten stronger. I think there's some elements of it that have gotten stronger, but other elements have gotten weaker. So, as a whole, I'm going to actually put this in gotten stronger. And I won't say any more for fear of spoilers, but I will say I think this theory still has a lot of potential, and if it's wrong, then it wasn't wrong because I was completely off course. It's wrong because I missed a key detail, and it was actually something very similar to this, but not exactly this. So, as a whole, I still think this theory has some elements of it that are still have a lot of potential. So, which may come as a surprise, considering there's some content in chapters 3 and 4 that a lot of people think puts some pretty major holes in this, and they're not wrong on some fronts. There's chapters 3 and 4 presented some major challenges for Asriel's Dust, but it's a complex topic, and that's why I'm making a whole video about it. So I'm just going to put this here for now. Honestly, there's an argument that's only in the still viable tier, but yeah, I think it's a little complex. So I'm going to put it here, though, for funsies. Next, we have the Who is the Knight theory. This video had me going over every character in Deltarune at the time, and as well as all the major characters from Undertale who haven't appeared in Deltarune yet, and discussing which ones are most likely to be the Roaring Knight. However, as far as theories go, at the very end, I came up with a theory that is it's pretty funny. It's half true and half busted. What am I talking about? Well, you see, the theory that I came up with was that there would be an entity, a Darkener, created from the dust and the hammer of Gerson Boom. And as we have seen, that theory was completely correct. Even the detail that the Darkener in question would be incredibly powerful, that also turned out to be true. But there was one other pretty important detail that got busted, which is that I thought that this would be the identity of the Roaring Knight. And that is pretty... I mean, technically, it's not busted, because we never actually see the old man and the knight in the same room at the same time. So technically, this could still be true. But it probably isn't. It's probably busted that the old man is secretly Gerson Boom. You may know this theory better as Oberon Smog. Oberon Smog being an anagram of Gerson Boom. And I thought he might have an anagram because I thought he was a similar Darkener to Ralsei. And Ralsei has an anagram of Azriel as his name. So, hence an anagram of Gerson Boom, a.k.a. Oberon Smog. So, where should this theory go? I mean, the idea that he would be the knight is almost certainly busted. However, the fact that I called the existence of the old man at all is probably going to be like my only proper victory in the lifetime of my channel as a Deltarune theory crafter. So I'm putting it in true. I don't care. I'm taking the W. It's probably the only one I'm ever gonna get. So I'm taking it. I was right. There was a Darkener made from the old man, or from Gerson's dust and hammer, and he ended up being a cool, powerful dude and a knight. He was a knight. You know, like, so it worked out. And in fact, this face I end up putting on here is remarkably similar to the face of the fake Gerson that we fight. So, yeah, I'm giving myself that. I don't care. Fight me. Then we have the truth of the shadow crystals. I think this theory was basically me saying that I think Deltarune is stuck in a time loop. And that's what the shadow crystals are hinting at. And, like, that's why characters like Sham and Jevil and Spamton have become nihilistic or gone mad. It's because they think nothing matters because everything's going to get reset. So why care? And there's more details to it involving the angel and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure that's what this theory video is about. I'm going to double check just to be sure. Actually, it's a little unclear. I would have to probably... This may have just... I might have technically hinted at the time loop in Deltarune Magic, but just for the sake of clarity, we're just going to say this is about the origins of the status quo in Deltarune theories, whereas this is about the time loop and the shadow crystals and the secret bosses and how they've been affected by all that. So, you know, we're just going to focus on that. So, time loop theory, how has that fared? I would say it's only gotten stronger, I'll be honest. There's more and more. Like, as I was playing the chapters, I was just like, Jesus, there's so much more. The existence of the prophecy is super, like, specific, and it's so specific that it's almost hard to believe that there isn't a time loop. Like, there's tons of small things throughout the new content that hint at this more and more and more. But just the fact that characters are so convinced that the world is kind of destined for darkness and doomed in some way just sort of further hints at some grand dark secret that hasn't been revealed yet regarding the fate of the world. And I think a time loop is what makes the most sense, and I think the evidence has only gotten stronger. So that one goes and gotten stronger. I think it is extremely likely that Deltarune is a time loop. I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time. But that's what I think for now. Then we have the Blood, Souls, and Sands theory. Let me double check to make sure I remember what this was about. Okay, so the gist of this theory video, it was expanding a little bit on the Deltarune magic theory, and basically saying that the angel is responsible for Deltarune monsters being so much tougher, and thus being able to have, and giving them physical bodies, which is why they can bleed, and also why they can wield determination. And furthermore, that Sans from Undertale originates from the Deltarune reality, which is why Sans also bleeds. It's because he has a physical body the same way Susie does. And the theory in this video is basically talking about what I think Sans' origin is, and specifically how he ends up in the Undertale reality. I theorize that Deltarune Papyrus is going to bite the dust, and that's going to motivate Sans to go to another universe where he can gain enough power to come back and break the time loop and save his brother. Very, very fanfiction-y, not going to lie. But technically, none of this has been debunked. None of this has been disproven so far. In fact, the detail of the monsters having physical bodies that can bleed and can wield determination has only gotten stronger. As in chapters 1 and 2, it was implied that characters like Bertley and Noelle could wield determination to create dark fountains, but we never saw it. But in chapters, I want to say chapter 4, was it? Yeah, that was when Susie did it. Susie created a dark fountain, confirming that monsters in the setting do have enough determination to create dark fountains, and the fact that they can wield determination at all implies they have physical bodies. And we know Susie has physical bodies because she explicitly bleeds on screen. So, part of this has gotten stronger. Most of it is endgame stuff that we just don't know yet. So, and honestly, regarding the fate of Papyrus specifically, I'm not convinced I was in the right there. As time has gone on, I feel like I think Papyrus might have a different fate than the one I envisioned here. Deltarune Papyrus, that is. So I'm not really sold on that myself anymore, so you could argue I've partially disowned at least part of it. But I haven't properly made an alternative interpretation yet for the fate of Deltarune Papyrus, so I wouldn't say it's officially disowned. So I guess combined with that, combined with the slight gotten, considering part of it's gotten stronger, part of it feels a little disowned, and most of it just hasn't been confirmed, I'll throw it in still viable. Then we have the Undertale Deltarune multiverse theory, which is basically the theory that replaced this video. In short, I went from thinking it's an alternate timeline to an alternate reality, a parallel reality, to be precise. And that's more or less the gist of it. It just goes in still viable. We don't know. There just isn't enough cosmic lore to hard confirm one way or another. Elemental pairs. This is basically just me theory crafting what a bunch, because basically there are certain elements that are paired with certain other elements, and I was basically predicting future elements and technically, and what their pairs would be. And I haven't actually gone through all of the elements and all the elemental pairs to see what has been added and what has been confirmed or deconfirmed or whatever. And I don't really want to right now, because that would require digging through the code probably. Unless Half-Bred Chaos is finally, not the word I was looking for. Unless Half-Bred Chaos has fully covered this topic and released a video further. Because they're the ones who really clued me into this stuff in the first place. But I guess I'm just going to take the cheap out and just say still viable, because technically, even if not all of these have been revealed or confirmed, technically every single element that I thought of and every pair I thought of is each their own small theory, and I'm sure And even if none of them have been confirmed yet, there's still like multiple chapters coming, so technically it could still end up true. I'm just gonna throw it in, still viable. It's not that interesting of a theory. Ooh, Kris's deaths. This theory is basically me arguing that before the events of Deltarune, Ness, aka December Holiday, was the previous wielder of determination and the previous controller of the timeline. However, she then created a Neo-Dark Fountain, which then trapped her in the Giga Dark world, wherever Gaster is, or something like that, and the darker yet darker world. And upon getting stuck there, she could no longer reach her save file, which is why she disappeared, and why the timeline has now fallen into Kris's hands. Beyond that, that's about it. Kris fills the role Ness used to play, in that they are now trying to fix the save the world, whereas Ness used to be trying to do that. Beyond that, as far as like that theory goes, I mean, I think parts of it may still be true. I mean, saying Ness fell into a dark world and, got trapped or corrupted or something is probably a fairly believable theory, given what we've seen and given how popular the theory is that Ness is the Roaring Knight. So that part of it is at least partially believed by the community already. So I don't know. I feel like there's elements of this. I'm working on a theory that touches on Ness a bit, because I think I need to do a theory on Ness at this point. I didn't want to. I thought Ness was going to be a much more minor character than she turned out to be. So, but yeah, so I'm working on a theory, but until then, I won't say this is disowned, per se. Or even that it's gotten weaker. I mean, I think a lot of this is simply unknown at this time. Saying that Ness had such a major role was probably a bit out there at the time, but given what we've seen from The Roaring Knight, saying Ness played a major role once upon a time is honestly not that unreasonable. The idea that maybe she followed a similar corrupting path to the one Asriel did in Undertale very much plays into the parallels. So there's evidence for this theory being true. And there's elements I don't agree with as much. So still viable. I'm sure we're going to get to a gotten weaker one eventually. The Gaster files. This was basically just me looking at some files and theory crafting about what they might be, what they might mean, what they might be hinting at. There was like 6 different theories in this video, but so I'll give them a look real quick just to see how they stand. Okay, the first theory, I'm just going to go through these theories one by one. Theory 1, that the intro sequence where you make your goner and you talk with Gaster, aka Jeff, as I've chosen to call him, is you're not playing as Kris when you make that goner. You're actually playing as a different character from the distant future. A character who isn't Kris and who was lured into this situation under false pretenses by Jeff, and Toby Fox was playing a trick on us and trying to make us think that scene led right into Kris waking up in their bedroom, when in reality that scene is from the far future. It was a flash forward rather than a flash back. So as far as that theory goes, it's still viable. Not much to say. We have no clue, honestly. Let's see. Theory number 2. Oh, okay. So the second theory is just that I think that the voice who talks to us in the intro sequence is Gaster. Crazy. What a theory. But specifically, I theorized that it is the Deltarune version of Gaster and not the Undertale version of Gaster. I think it's also still viable. There's we still just don't know anything about Gaster. What a shocker. Let's see, Theory 3. Theory 3 is basically just me arguing that the game over sequence where Jeff talks to you is him talking to this other character from the future, and that Gaster sent them back in time or something to possess a body and something. All completely unverifiable. Still viable, though, so there's that. Next theory, Theory 4, I think we're on? Okay. Theory 5. The unknown human from the future had their body put into a machine, which is the machine that's being referred to in the code, and the drone audio file is specifically the drone of that machine. And after putting their body in that machine, Jeff sent their soul back in time to possess a new vessel, the Goner vessel. And it is there that they are performing a scheme to try and break the time loop. Yeah, still viable. There's nothing confirming or denying that. Okay, the next theory in this is that Jeff lives inside of a dark fountain. Dark fountains enhance the abilities of those who are close by them, which is why we only unlock our super abilities during like the final fights against King and Queen when we're standing right in front of a dark fountain. And lastly, that dark fountains can have an emotional manipulation effect upon those who are exposed to them for too long, and that Jeff specifically is using this to manipulate specific characters towards his ends, namely King, Queen, people like that, and enhancing their less savory qualities in order to push them to accomplish things that he desires. So that's interesting. Still completely unverifiable. Very interesting. I know, not the most thrilling commentary, but that's the issue with so many of these theories. So many of them are about things that are so endgame or so far in the future that there's just not enough information to confirm them or deny them. So, yeah. It's just too early. But hopefully we can get something going on. Let me see if there's any other theories in this dang Gaster Files video. Okay, Theory 8 in this video is that Jeff created the key gen that Spamton gives to Kris to unlock the basement, and that Jeff programmed the key gen to alert him if it's used, and the friend, the smiling face Cheshire Cat entity with yellow and pink eyes, works for Jeff, and Jeff sent them to see who accessed the basement, which is why we can see the friend in the basement in Deltarune Chapter 2. I would say that theory's maybe gotten weaker, considering the friend seems more connected to some of the main plot stuff rather than background Gaster stuff. So that's probably the first of these theories that I'd say has gotten a little weaker. And lastly, Theory 9, I think we're on. Basically, the song that plays in front of fountains is called The Holy, because dark fountains only exist because of the tinkering of the angel, and the angel is by definition a holy entity, ergo the holy. Still viable, not much to say. Like, there's 9 theories in this video. One of them's a little weaker. Most of them simply haven't been confirmed or debunked. Next, we have Hyperlink blocked, and this theory is basically me discussing what Hyperlink blocked might be a stand-in for. And I theorize that it's a stand-in for the word love, because love has a lot of various important connotations in these games. Hasn't been confirmed or debunked. I think there's some hints as to the true nature of Hyperlink blocked in Chapter 4. One of the philosophers talks about Hyperlink blocked. I haven't done enough digging to fully confirm one way or another. And there's certainly some evidence in some of the tertiary stuff, like the Spamton sweepstakes, to kind of push away from the theory that it is love. So the fact that Spamton uses the word love during the Spamton sweepstakes once does kind of hurt the theory a little. So I'll say gotten weaker. You know, you could argue it's still viable, but I don't know. I want something in these other tiers. So yeah, gotten weaker. It's still very viable, but not necessarily as concrete as it once was. Des is Ness. This theory basically argues that Ness and Tintin, which are the protagonists from Earthbound and Mother 1, as well as their families, were direct inspirations for the Holiday family, with Des being inspired by Ness, and then like characters like I think Tintin's mother is named Carol, and at the time it was not yet confirmed that the mayor's name is Carol. So it was a theory in and of itself to even predict that her name was Carol. And the fact that one of the characters from Mother was named Carol and was the mother of a character named Ness, or it was actually the first character, Tintin. So the mother of Tintin was Carol, and Tintin is basically just Ness 1.0 and Ness, etc. So like it's just some theories surrounding that, I'm pretty sure. Not much to say on that front. The fact that it was confirmed that Carol's name is Carol certainly strengthens the theory that these characters are based upon some Earthbound and whatnot characters. Oh, and it also ties into Toby Hawkins' Earthbound Halloween hack, as in that game, Ness is very noticeably missing from the plot, and has been replaced with some other hero. And that's kind of a parallel to how Des is completely missing from the plot, and may have been the hero of her own story prior to the events of Deltarune. So I would say this has only gotten stronger. So yeah, that's an interesting kind of smaller scale, like origins of inspiration for characters kind of theory. Then we get the not the player theory. Basically, I'm arguing that everyone just assumes that the soul is a stand-in for the player. I don't agree with that. I think the soul is meant to be, well, Kris's soul, but also contain an entity that is possessing Kris diegetically in the narrative. And while the player is controlling the entity possessing Kris, that entity is not us, and that entity is their own character in the setting. And that's the gist of it. I don't believe in the idea that this is just a stand-in for the player and nothing more. Has that concept gotten stronger, weaker, etc.? Yeah, it's gotten stronger. Just the existence of the weird route is so destructive for the belief that the soul is just a stand-in for the player, because it is so niche and so specific what that route requires you to do that it just doesn't make sense for it to just be, oh, this is just what the player wants. It's like, why do I have to do these extremely specific things with Noelle and to Noelle? Why do I have to corrupt her? Why do I have to give her the thorn ring that I get from Spampton after freezing 20 Darkners or whatever? It's like, it's so hyper specific. You can't argue it's a manifestation of the player's will when it's just forcing us to do a bunch of things that we could neither conceive of nor desire. If this is meant to represent the player, then we would be given the option to corrupt different characters. We could corrupt Susie, we could corrupt Noelle, we could corrupt, I don't know, Jockington. Like we'd have the choice to corrupt more than one person, but since we're forced to go down a very narrow path, it just doesn't make sense for the soul, which rather explicitly possesses Kris and turns their hair red and does all this crazy stuff. And also during the weird route in chapter 4, we rather explicitly are prevented from making meaningful choices at times. Like during the conversation with Noelle after we repossess Kris, we are given a bunch of choices that don't impact the outcome. And then like Susie's like, oh, later she's like, well, y'all weren't talking about me, were you? And it gives you two options that are blank. And it's like, that if that's not screaming that the soul and the player are two very different separate entities and that our influence is separate from the entity's goals, I don't know what does. So I would say the idea that this is just the player is weaker now than it's ever been before. So, yeah. Dark clock theory. This is one of my simplest theories. Just basically, all the clocks in the hometown are broken and are all pointing at different times. However, I noticed, I came up with the theory that maybe the hands of the clocks are pointing at future dark worlds due to the reality warping nature of those things and the time loop or whatever. And yeah, all the hands are pointing towards dark worlds that either already exist or were likely to exist in the future, such as the one that was made in Kris's home and one that is likely to appear in Asgore's shop. Some have argued that this theory has been weakened or debunked because none of the clocks are pointing to the church. However, it's, since every clock only has two hands, and there's going to be probably at minimum like over 8 different dark worlds over the course of this game, that means that, they can't all be pointing to every single possible dark world. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go into somewhere like Caddy's house or, somewhere like that shows us a new clock with an arm pointing towards the church. So I wouldn't say that debunks or disproves anything. It also hasn't, we've gotten even more evidence that Asgore's shop is going to be a dark world. So that actually makes it stronger. The lack of a clock pointing towards the church potentially makes it weaker. I guess we'll just throw it in still viable. I don't know. Actually, it's getting too large. Let's just throw it in gotten stronger. Because I can. Then we have this theory. The hope, streams, light, death, magic, emotion, dark life. I think this is my dark matter theory. That's right. Basically, I theorize that when you go into the dark world, you're turned into dark matter, and this kind of matter is very different from matter in the light world in that it is transformable. Like your sword can transform into a shield. Enemies can shapeshift. And then that's all because their bodies aren't made of regular matter. And is instead more of a manifestation of the soul kind of thing. So basically we kind of have souls or bodies similar to the magic bodies that that monsters had in Undertale, which is why monsters are able to suddenly wield magic again when they enter the dark world. But Kris can't, because Kris is a human. And humans can't use magic. Although it has since been confirmed that humans used to be able to wield magic in Undertale, but they used it all up in the war. I don't know how that works. My brother in Christ. I don't know how that makes sense, but it's canon, so you can use up your magic, or at least humanity can. I don't know if monsters can. Maybe that's why monsters don't have magic in Deltarune. Maybe they used it all up. I don't know. I'll have to dig into that. The live stream, the 10 year anniversary live stream or whatever it had some crazy stuff that I am honestly still processing. So yeah, as far as this theory goes, I think it's just about the dark matter. Let me double check it, just to be safe. Okay, yeah. And it basically is just about the various ways that the light world bodies and dark world bodies differ. And, dark world Kris and Susie can fall from extreme heights without harm, whereas they obviously couldn't do that in the light world. Hopes and dreams play a big part of it. Like, basically the idea that the personalities of Darkners are informed by the hopes and dreams, aka the sort of spiritual radiation imprinted upon them by Lightners. Just a whole bunch of more cosmic stuff that just isn't hard confirmed or denied at this stage. Let me just get this last theory up here, because this is about to stretch the tier list. This is another still viable, hasn't been confirmed, debunked, etc. Which just leaves the Earth is bleeding, aka my life stream theory. This holds that this is kind of a sequel / debunking, or not debunk, but alternate interpretation of the Deltarune magic to an extent. It basically argues that dark that the darkness, that the that makes up the dark worlds, that makes up the dark fountains, is derived from the soul of the planet. And that the soul of the planet is so powerful that, you know, if you damage it and you release its blood, aka the dark fountains, into the world, it completely warps reality, which is what creates the dark worlds. And the idea that the planet has a soul has been hinted at before, with stuff like songs called "But the Earth Refused to Die," or like references to the Earth's heart beating, or the Earth drawing its final breath, stuff like that. So yeah, very interesting. I quite like this theory. It's one of my. It was the last theory I made before the new chapters came out. And yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. It draws heavily from Final Fantasy VII in its inspirations. But I don't think that makes it any less likely to be true. And it like connects up with a bunch of other things from Final Fantasy VII, like the Titans, because Final Fantasy VII also has Titans sent forth. And I theorized like the Titans were guardians sent forth by the Earth to fight off infection, effectively, fight off whoever's wounded it. And considering that I think the song, or there's something in the code that refers to the Titans as a guardian, that actually further supports the theory. So I'm just going to throw it and gotten stronger. Yeah, because I'm just that cool. Anyway, so in short, none of my theories have been busted because I'm just so huge-brained. And everything I say is correct and true, except when I say it's no longer true, and that's only because I found a better truth. I'm joking. The real reason that none are busted is because I'm being kind of cheeky with Who is the Knight. You could honestly very comfortably throw this into busted, but I'm just, for funsies, I'm going to throw it in true. And the reason nothing else is really all that low on the tier list as far as being busted is because most of these are about things that we just haven't gotten to yet. We're not going to find out about the inspiration behind characters for a while. We're not going to find out about the true nature of the entire universe for a while. We're not going to find out about Sans or Gaster or Kris or the multiverse or the nature of the Earth and the Titans and all that. Like, we don't have it yet. And we won't until next year, maybe longer. So it's just like most of these theories, they've gotten, some of them have gotten stronger, some have gotten weaker. Some have gotten stronger and weaker in different parts and different categories. And at the end of the day, I'm very excited to see what else is in store. Obviously, those who are more critical of my theories or know a thing or two about Asriel's Dust think that there should probably be even more down here in busted. But the reality is, we are, what we know about Deltarune, and for certain, is far outweighed by all the things we don't know. So, for the time being, this is probably the best tier list I can give you regarding the accuracy of my theories. I hope it was interesting to revisit these theories, and I look forward to coming up with more theories in the time between now and the release of chapters 5 and 6. Thank you all for watching, and I think I'll go ahead and give a quick thanks to all my supporters on Patreon for continuing to fund me during these very difficult times. Quite frankly, YouTube has just dried up as a financial source of revenue. Whether that's because of changes YouTube's made to the algorithm, or because Deltarune interest has just died down, or because I haven't uploaded any theory videos or something. I don't know. It just hasn't been doing great. So I owe you folks on Patreon a whole heck of a lot. So thank you all very much. And Thank you. Let's see. I'll insert. I'm going to have to look it up in a minute. And insert thanks for specific patrons here. A special thanks goes to E-Roll, Ash the Fox, Limping Penguin, and Tibby Fitzhugh for supporting me on the Noel tier. An extra special thanks goes to Amber and Uberon for supporting me on the Ralsei tier. And last but certainly not least, a huge thanks goes to Spindrift for being the only big shot willing and able to support me on the Spampted tier. I, as always, am indebted to all of you for your incredibly generous support. I hope I can continue to make videos that entertain and distract from all the silly nonsense happening in the world. Thank you all again. And with those wonderful people thanked, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you've got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.